You can now hear Movie Heaven, Movie Hell on Stitcher. Stitcher is radio on demand. Listen anytime, anywhere. Stitcher is an award-winning free app that lets you listen to all your favourite shows, plus discover from 20,000 news, entertainment and sports shows. You can also create your own custom playlists. Stitcher is available on iOS, Android, Nook, iPad and in over 4 million car dashboards. It's on demand and it's on the go. No downloading, no syncing, no wasted memory. You can stream your favourite podcasts from Stitcher. Don't have Stitcher? Download it free today at Stitcher.com or in the App Store. And please leave us a review and rating on Stitcher. Thank you. Welcome to Movie Heaven, Movie Hell with me, Simon Aitken, and Keith isn't here because he's on holiday in LA. So it's just me going solo on this one. But I'm happy to be talking to Rob Wickings, who is a colour grader, and you're also a writer, director, and producer.
I am, yes. Hello, Simon.
Hello, Rob. We're sort of here talking about grading because I think there's a lot of people out there who would be interested to sort of hear what you have to say on it, and also the fact I think some people don't realise that there is this role called a colorist who goes in and plays with like the look of the film. So. Let's start at the beginning. How did you become a grader?
How did I? Well, I started work at a post-production facility in Soho called TVP, which no longer exists, sadly, based in Golden Square. And I kind of came up through the ranks, worked initially as a runner, and then moved into the sort of dubbing VT area and became a senior operator there. But it was starting to get a little bit dull and a little bit boring. And there was a department that was always kind of sort of tucked away a little bit called the Telecine department, which basically was involved in transferring film to tape for various purposes, either for TV or for sell-through video. And I got the opportunity to kind of move sideways and try out this Telecine lark and see what it was like. So, I did about a month, 6 weeks or so of training, made a few mistakes along the way, but kind of got into it that way, and really that's been my role ever since. So basically based around the idea of retasking or moving film from basic celluloid onto tape as it was then and data as it is now, but essentially that role hasn't really changed that much.
Okay, what was the first film or TV show that you were sort of like a proper grader on?
Oh crikey! Well, we used to do a lot of work for a company called Tartan Video. I don't know if you remember them at all.
I do remember Tartan Video, yes.
Yeah, who had a good reputation for sort of art house horror, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they were the ones who released the John Woo films.
That's correct. Yeah. So, well, that's a bit of pride actually, because one of the very early jobs I did for Tartan Video was The Killer.
Oh wow!
So I was one of the first people to actually see The Killer in the UK. So basically, we got a show print in that we graded and transferred onto tape, and that was done for sell-through video, and that was part of the fun of the job at the time, because you did get to see a lot of this, a lot of really interesting kind of art house and bits and bobs like that. Before anyone else pretty much saw them, so that was great fun.
Oh wow! I mean, what other Tartan titles did you work on? Because I remember at the beginning of each video you had the Tartan trailer where they had like Cinema Paradiso and Night of the Living Dead.
Oh crikey! Yeah, loads and loads of different ones. We had that contract for years, so pretty much everything that Tartan put through. We did memorable titles. I did Man Bites Dog. That was very good. Clark's actually. I think I was one of the first people in the UK to see Clark's. So yeah, that was quite good fun because it was a bit of a strange aspect ratio as well. It'd been shot 1:6:6, which was unusual at the time for certainly for sell-through video. So there was a little bit of a jiggery pokery actually trying to figure out what the right aspect ratio was for that, because it was never really on the cans or anything like that. It was just it was just you kind of had to sort of take your best guess and see if the headroom was right or if mics started popping into shot and things like that, and then kind of go from there really.
So was that was it more of like a square than a rectangle?
Well, no, a little bit more of a rectangle than 4:3 would be. So, so if you imagine, TV ratio as was 1:33 to 1 or 4:3. So 1:6:6 would actually be closer to the Super 16 native aspect ratio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, film geek. So we're 6 minutes into the programme and I'm already talking about aspect ratios. I do apologise. It's only going to go downhill from here. You do realise that.
Well, we just done an episode on Paul Verhoeven, and I know that you worked on Black Book, which was his film. The first film he made coming back from America. So what was that like to work on?
That was really good fun. My role on that was kind of the dailies colorist. So basically I'd be the guy that would be getting the film rushes in. I'd be transferring them, applying a look that Paul Verhoeven and his DOP at the time wanted to see, and just generally making sure that the material looked good, it was in focus, and so on and so forth. It was a bit of a difficult one because obviously he was shooting out in Holland, and the rushes were coming back to us. I was working in a lab at the time, so we were processing the film rushes and then getting them back out, giving Mr. Verhoeven and everyone their feedback on it. But yeah, it was a really interesting time. Around the same sort of time, I was working on things like Stephen Frears' The Queen as well. So we had quite a few really interesting projects coming through the lab that I was working in at the time, and it was great fun to work on these projects.
So were you able to watch the rushes?
Yeah, that was the whole point. Basically, I was pretty much the first eye on those rushes after they came out of the bath. So, really, part of my responsibility was to make sure the material didn't have, say, camera scratches on it. The focus was right. If people were sort of wandering into shot that maybe hadn't been spotted by the ADs or anything like that. So all that kind of reporting stuff. So it's like. First view reporting really, but which would have been back in the day, it would have been something that the rushes would have been printed up and screened for the producer, director, DOP. But those days seem to have gone, and it certainly wasn't something that they could do for Black Book or anything like that. They kind of had to take our word. Until obviously they saw the transferred rushes that everything was good, or not, as the case may be.
So what were they transferred to?
At the time, it would have been it was tape format still. We were just on the verge of not transferring to data, so it would have been Digibeta, I would have thought initially.
Oh, okay. And so having watched like the rushes from that film, what were your thoughts of what you saw?
Well, I mean, Black Book is a pretty brutal work in places, and it's kind of strange when you sort of wander in for a sort of normal morning's transfer and you're seeing Carice van Houten being basically abused by Nazis and things like that. That can put a little bit of a crimp in your day, I have to say. But it was very clear. It was a very personal vision for Verhoeven, and there was a lot of passion and care in the work. Yeah, you could see just from the rushes that it was going to be something pretty special. So that's one I'm particularly proud of having a credit on.
Oh, cool. I mean, no, it must have been, yeah. You must have sort of seen that that scene.
That scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you haven't seen the film, then I won't spoil it for you. But you must have seen that scene from a lot of different angles.
I think they did have 3 different cameras on that particular scene, yeah, just to make sure they got all the coverage that they needed to.
How did you feel after seeing that?
I felt like I needed to have a shower, basically. But even that, I mean, I know it's an intense piece of work, but you still knew that there was a very good reason for it to be there. There was never a sense of what was being shown being particularly exploitative. You can kind of piece together the storytelling even at the brushes stage. So it was hard, but you knew why it was there. Let's put it like that.
Yeah. What other films have you worked on?
Well, I mentioned Stephen Frears' The Queen earlier on, and that again was a really good one to work on. We were pretty much involved from day one on that. So chatting to Stephen Frears, his DOP, and getting the look, making sure the material looked the way it should do. That was really good fun. And the thing for me was watching the way Helen Mirren would kind of change character in an instant. So you'd see her sort of getting ready for the take, and then as soon as the clapper went, she changed like that, and she was a different person, and that was quite amazing. I don't think Helen Mirren quite gets the kudos she maybe should do as an actress, because she was absolutely amazing in The Queen, but just seeing the way she could turn literally on a dime like that was amazing, really.
Well, I mean, I think people are sort of starting to. I think she certainly is getting the kudos now. I mean, it was a long time coming, assuming that she'd worked from the 70s all the way quite consistently through the 80s, 90s, and then to the noughties up to the point where she made The Queen. And so I think she certainly has gotten her due, and she's working a lot now. But,
absolutely. I mean, there's an element of her turning into a national treasure now, where she can do no wrong. But I've always been a fan of her as an actress, as well as everything else. So it's great to see her really still doing the do even now. She's mid-60s now, something like that, maybe.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. But what was the first film you saw her in?
Oh crikey! Excalibur. She was amazing in Excalibur for all sorts of reasons.
Yeah, I think Excalibur was the first one I saw her in as well. But I thought she was really good in The Long Good Friday as well.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean, you look at her filmography. She's just done so much over the years, and just all sorts of different roles as well. I mean, she's one of our best character actors, I think. But it's really good to see her taking starring roles now. So, yeah.
So, what other films have you worked on?
Oh, blimey! There's. I'll tell you what else I've worked on. I mean, apart from films, obviously being a colorist means you do get to work on a lot of all sorts of different stuff. And I was actually colorist for a couple of seasons of Last of the Summer Wine. I don't know if you remember that show.
I do remember that show.
Yeah.
What period was that from?
That was kind of late period for them. So we're kind of talking, I guess, early 2000s, maybe a little bit later than that. But so you post Compo, that sort of period. So you've got but still was it shot on film still? No, they moved on to video at that point, I think.
I always thought it was a combination of two, because I think the outside, I guess I don't know if this is correct or not, but I remember that the BBC used to shoot film for outside, and then in the studio it was video.
Yeah, that was always the case when production video cameras were just too heavy to really get outside for anything other than a kind of specialist outside broadcast kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that was the case. I do remember, sort of very much through the 80s and 90s, that there was a different look to the outside and the interiors. I mean, the interiors were definitely, for the most part, studio. While I think, and though saying that, I think probably about the time you were working on it, it may have changed. That it may have all gone location.
No, actually, it did.
No.
At the time I was there, because I actually went to Pinewood to have a look at the interiors that they were shooting.
Oh, okay.
So they basically had pretty much all the interiors there. So they had the cafe and the inside of the library and things like that. And so they basically had a nested set of internal sets. So yeah, all the interiors were shot pretty much at Pinewood, and then exteriors obviously out in the wilds of Yorkshire.
Oh.
So the fun challenge for that programme was obviously, it's called Last of the Summer Wine. So the whole trick was to make it look bright and summery and warm, which, when they're shooting in Yorkshire, up in the Dales in March, trust me, sometimes it's very, very difficult to get that warm look. So that was always a fun challenge, and obviously had the main guy. I can't remember his name off the top of my head now. Alan J.W. Bell, who was kind of the prime creative mover behind Last of the Summer Wine. Always written by Roy Clark, but he produced and Alan Bell wrote and produced it. So he was always in kind of, keeping an eye on what I was doing and just trying to make sure it did have that kind of warm, summery look, which admittedly was a little bit forced in places. But, you do what you can with what you're given. And, if it's chucking it down with rain, making things look bright and sunshiny can be a little bit tricky.
Well, I imagine, especially all that rain starting to appear on screen.
Yeah, exactly. But no, the 2 seasons of that was really good fun. So it's been a very, very broad spread of stuff that I've worked on. I mean, obviously you're kind of concerned about the movie side of it, but an awful lot of TV I've done as well. Everything from sort of early reality show stuff through to documentaries, bits and bobs like that. So, which is the way it should be, really. And any colourist worth their salt should be working on a broad range of stuff. So, so you have a good set of tools, creative tools, to be able to bring anything you like to the particular task that you're given to do, or that you choose to do. Yeah,
yes, primarily we sort of talk about films, but we also talk about TV where we can and stuff. And
sure,
I think what you say is it just sort of goes across the board, because like as a director, I've done films, I've done TV, I've done music videos, I've done corporates, I've done commercials, I've done a whole range of stuff, and it's you kind of have to, just so so that you can try different things out and you can learn different things. So when you do come to doing like a big project, you can bring all that stuff with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you want to talk about actually what it is to be a colorist and what a colorist can bring to a project.
No, let's talk about it.
Just because my memory is fading, and I could go through a big list of films and things I've worked on, but let's actually talk about the art and craft, because you do a certain amount of that yourself, don't you now?
Yeah, just a bit. But okay, well, when you first started being a grader, what was the kind of the equipment you were using, and how's it changed throughout the years?
Okay, well, when I started, obviously the notion of being a colorist was kind of wasn't really there. I mean, it was just starting to sort of peek its head round, but the idea was that you were a telecine operator. So you basically had film that you kind of balanced and optimized electronically, and then electronically put it onto tape. So obviously that's changed massively over the years. Film you don't see so much of, other than at the really high end. You know things like your Batman v Supermans, your Star Wars, your Bonds, things like that are still shot on film. But the vast majority of material that comes into a Colour suite now is obviously data, which you then manipulate and then you push back out as data. So that workflow has obviously changed things massively. You're expected to do an awful lot more in terms of logging the data that you get, applying lookup tables and things like that, which is, that's what your magic bullets and things like that are. They're effectively just lookup tables that take a set of data, apply another set of values to them, and at the end you get something with a different look.
I think a lot of people think that like lookup tables are kind of like these like programs and stuff, but really if you look at them, they're actually just like a text file that says do this, do this, do this, and do this.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I mean they can have value in terms of sort of taking the raw data that comes out of the back of a camera, which often, if you look at a raw file, it's not a good look, really, is it? It's although interestingly enough, there was a bit of a trend not that long ago for stuff to actually look as if it had basically just come out of the back of a camera. There was no blacks in it. It was really milky, no contrast, no colour. But because people were editing with those files, they kind of got used to them and then decided, I know that's a look, we're going with that. Which...
You saw it a lot in advertising, the whole sort of bleached out look.
Yeah,
so everything was very bright, everything was very white, and it certainly was a look, and but it was one of those looks that it just was being used for everything, and I think got tiresome very quickly.
Yeah, it was a bit of a trend, and now and it didn't last very long, just because, frankly, the pictures weren't that attractive, really. But there you go. I think what's changed a lot over the years is the ability to do so much more with so much less, really. I've always been an advocate of the kind of less is more school of colour grading, where basically you're doing a lot with just your primary colour correction and a little bit of secondary. What I'm not doing is the kind of advertising school where you basically just take an image and effectively break it down into its component parts and then grade each of those. So you could have a background that you grade separately to, say, the face of the person that's in that shot, separately to, say, what's on the table, separately to everything else. So you end up with effectively like a 20-layer Photoshop thing with layers moving around, tracking and things like that. And although that's fine for certain things, it's fine for sort of advertising and things like that, it gets very tiresome very quickly when you're having to grade an awful lot of material. So in the rushes world, in the drama world, where you need to crank through stuff, clients expect you to be working very, very quickly on stuff, and you honestly don't have time to be nuancing and tweaking every tiny little bit. So I grew up not having those tools. So I can use them, and I do use them when I need to use them. But my mindset is always, okay, let's get balance correct first. Let's get our blacks looking good. Let's get our highlights looking good. Let's make sure the mid ranges are clean and nice. And then from there, then we can start applying a look if you need one. Then if you feel that this person's face is underexposed, then we can lift that, and so on and so forth. But you do find that 90 to 95% of the workload on any given piece is actually perfectly achievable just using your base controls. That's philosophy I've always applied, and it's stood me in good stead, really. There is a place for secondary grades and, you know, windows and things like that. But personally, I believe that it's always worth getting the basic grade layer right before you do anything else. And you do see a lot of colorists that just don't do that. They go straight in and start putting windows on stuff and lifting stuff that they don't necessarily need to do, certainly not at the initial stage.
Yeah. I mean, when you're grading, do you do it by eye, or are you just always constantly looking at the scopes?
There has to be a bit of both, really. Setting an initial grade, it's very useful having scopes, but I think you have to trust your eyes as well. Obviously, that a lot of that comes down to the correct calibration of your monitoring. You know, making sure that you haven't got a blue hue on your monitor or anything like that. But no, people will hire a colorist to have an eye to be able to see things in a different way to the way they're looking, or to key into a director's vision or a DOP's vision. So yeah, using scopes is vitally important. And again, I think that's something that a lot of new colorists maybe don't use enough, is to make sure that, you know, when they start grading, they don't instantly crush the blacks down, so there's no detail, so there's nowhere to go with those blacks. But no, the eye is everything, really. You have to trust what your eye is telling you, what your instincts are telling you when it comes to grading any given scene or item.
For those who don't know, what do you mean by crushing the blacks?
Crushing the blacks is, I'm kind of waving my hands about here, which is something that colorists always do. We're very tactile creatures, basically, because of the essential elements of the tools we use are, it's not sort of mouse and tablet. It's basically, what's the best way of putting it? I want to say balls and rings.
Well, yeah, no, that is the best way to put it. I mean, the control surface is balls with a ring around it, isn't it?
Yeah. So the ring basically controls the amount of level of a given bit of a video signal. Let's call it a video signal for want of a better word. But basically, crushing the blacks would be taking the low lights of a signal and basically taking them down past a 0 volt level, which means basically you can't see it anymore. So crushing the blacks works in a dramatic sense, in that, you know, you end up with a very contrasty scene, but it does mean that if you want to get detail back in, it's actually very, very difficult to do. So you're always better off, rather than taking your blacks down past the 0 volt level, actually just sitting them slightly above, which again is why it's absolutely vital to have scope knowledge and understanding why things look the way they do. It's very easy to see on a scope something that is crushed, and then hopefully you can do something about it. But if your base material is crushed, then you're stuffed, basically. All you do is be lifting a flat line as opposed to something that's got detail in it.
Yeah. I mean, do you get footage now, or then that's sort of what we call flat, which is everything looks grey? Or is it like sometimes you're having to rescue it because they have crushed the blacks when they've been shooting?
Yeah. I always think there's two strands to a colorist's job. You've got the creative side of it, which everyone likes to talk about, you know, the way you can take an image and give it this gorgeous look. But half to 2/3 of what you'll do on any given day, particularly if you're working in reality stuff or news footage, is rescue. It's about matching, and it's about actually trying to make an image look partway decent. And particularly with say documentary stuff, it'll be shot these days on so many different kinds of cameras. You know, you'll get phone footage in there, you'll get stuff from DSLRs, you'll get proper cameras in there, and your job is to match all that up. You know, you don't know what the white balance has been like, if there's been a white balance done on these cameras. So you need to get them to a point where the material at least looks like it was shot in one place at one time, which frequently, again, isn't the case as well. So it is about getting the balance right. You know, I use the word balance an awful lot when I'm talking about the colorist's trade, because it is about supplying a signal that does look clean and balanced. So you've got whites, you've got blacks. Obviously, you know, if the client wants a tweak to that, if he wants things to look a little bit blue, if he's going for a moody kind of crime drama look, or if he wants things to look a bit brown because, you know, they're going for an old timey sort of a look, then yeah, absolutely you can do that. But again, you know, 9 times out of 10, what people want is clean, bright, sharp images. So that's the job, really. And sometimes that's difficult when you see what you get in the door at the beginning of the session.
Well, I think I put my question better, actually, is do you prefer that the image be flat, or do you prefer that they have that there's some sort of contrast to it or some sort of colour done to it already?
Well, I prefer really that it comes out of the camera clean. I mean, obviously, raw footage, you can apply a lot to it, which will kind of take the very thin signal and bring it back to some sort of easily workable thing. But no, as long as there's signal there that can be worked with without completely overloading the range of the software that you're working with, then it doesn't really matter. You know, if you're dealing with say Red Raw or sort of Arri Raw stuff, you know it's going to come in looking a certain way. You know, it's going to be a flat signal. But the first thing you do would be to apply a lot to that. That will instantly take a lot of the green out. It'll bring the blacks down a bit. It'll bring the whites up a bit. It'll give you a little bit of contrast, and then from there you can start giving the material the look that it needs, or at the very least, you know, make your whites white, make your blacks black, so on and so forth.
Yeah. Oh, I just asked because a lot of these sort of cameras coming out now, especially on the digital SLR range, they are coming with these sort of very flat profiles, and they are pushing towards that. And I know I've used it a couple of times now, and the thing I always find is that especially in editing, it's really hard because a lot of the time you're not quite sure if it's in focus or not. I mean, that was the one of the things that I found shooting with having one of these sort of very flat profiles was it was really hard to tell if the damn thing was in focus.
Really? Oh God!
Yeah, it was because it's all flat. It's all color wise. It's just flat, and it is amazing then when you do take it into the sort of to be graded or put a LUT on there that it does come to life. But it's just one of these weird things where it's kind of like you kind of would like to see what it looks like without it just being completely flat.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing that's always confused me a little bit about raw footage, which is, you know, it's captured all the detail, but why is it captured in a way that is quite so unpleasant to the human eye? Why is it that you have to sort of load up something else to actually get it looking normal in the first place? We should, you know, I don't know.
I think it's the fact is then that you're not locked into one look, that you can change it whichever way you want to. You can change the color temperature. You can change. I don't know. It's just you can change it a lot more than if it's sort of if the look is kind of cooked in.
Yeah, but you know, to a certain extent, you can do that with an image that's looking reasonable rather than it looking just so incredibly flat. I do take what you're saying, but I don't know. I always started off with images that looked fairly decent from frame one, and then from there you can still take them and pull them around any way you want. But you know, hey, what do I know? I'm a pretty old school guy here, Simon. You know, I don't understand a lot of this modern stuff.
Well, do you feel that the look of the films now and TV is becoming more the colorist's job and less the DOP's?
Oh no, I think DOPs always want to put a certain they want to put their stamp on stuff. And I think really that what happens is that they'll work in conjunction with colorists that they trust to deliver that vision. There was certainly a period, probably in the 1990s into the early 2000s, where colorists had a particular look, and if you wanted a particular look, you went to that colorist, and that colorist gave you that look. And there's a lot of colorists out there that did make fame and fortune out of basically bringing the same thing time and time and time again. What's happening now is that with digital formats being able to sort of feedback stuff so easily to the creatives on the set and whatever, the guys the directors and the DOPs are able to kind of set a look a lot more quickly and kind of make sure that the colorist is actually delivering that particular look. You're getting a lot more feedback a lot more quickly. So the colorist is vitally important in this whole chain, even more so, I think, than they've ever been, because obviously, you know, you're getting flat stuff in that needs something doing to it, and frankly, a LUT just doesn't really cut it half the time. You know, you need someone to be able to sort of tweak stuff and lift stuff, because as you were saying earlier, a LUT is basically just a set of instructions, and that set of instructions doesn't really care if it's going to crush blacks or blow out whites. It will just do what it does. So it's down to the colorist to be able to sort of say, actually, you know, we can circumvent this and do that instead. So you know, the colorist role is still vitally important, but he's kind of not, he or she isn't the be all and end all of the final given look of any particular piece. The best looking stuff is always delivered where the colorist and the DOP and the director are all talking together and agreeing together and giving a particular look. The worst is obviously when you get a colorist or a DOP or a director that doesn't agree with the other two parts in that chain. So that's just the way it goes, unfortunately, sometimes. And then you just end up with something that does look like a bit of a dog's breakfast. But yes, colorists are important, but not as important as they maybe were. Is the short answer.
So I mean, earlier you sort of said about how I grade now as well, and I grade because you kind of you taught me, you sort of showed me the sort of the basics.
Yes, my young Padawan.
What happened was that on Blood and Roses, I asked you to sort of come on board as a colorist because you had done my previous shorts monologue triptych.
That's right.
And you were quite happy to sort of show me the ropes and sort of set up a few basic looks for the film, and then just let me go. You know, and let me do the sort of the bulk of it, and then you would come back and just, you know, adjust slightly if that was the case.
Yeah, so in some that way of doing things is what's called being a supervising colorist, which a lot of the really big names have now moved on to, where they will kind of set a look and then sort of put a you know, either a junior or a staff actually onto making sure that everything matches up, and then maybe tweak it a little bit at the end. But that just seemed to make more sense, because it meant you could, as opposed to me sort of coming in and doing a session, it meant you could actually wander off and do your own thing to a certain extent, but, you know, tweak to your heart's content, and then I'd come in at the end and go, yeah, that's a bit, that one shot you can maybe just do that with. And I personally, I think it worked very well. You know, Blood and Roses is a good looking piece of work, if I do say so myself.
Yeah. Well, you certainly got the credit for it.
Yeah, I did.
I feel like I certainly need to sort of. I think I should add myself now as junior colorist.
Junior colorist, yeah. Well, as long as I get changed to supervising colorist, that's fine.
But no, it's sort of how I was able to do that was at the time Apple had released Colour through their Final Cut suite, and that was sort of the first time that I can remember that grading software was out there available to the public to use. And of course, it's now grown with DaVinci Resolve. Now you can
Absolutely.
get a free copy of Resolve, and Resolve is actually very, very good at grading. I mean, I use it all the time now
I'm
when I can. But
Well, I'm a massive fan of Resolve, and I'm not the only one. Certainly in the DI world, in the sort of film grading world, Resolve is pretty much where it's at now. Most people, most big colorists will use Resolve because it is incredibly powerful and very, very straightforward and easy to use. I think that's the main thing, that you can work very, very quickly, and you can set up looks very, very quickly with it. But it is astonishing what they give away for free on there. I mean, really, the only difference between the free version and the studio version, well, there's a couple. There's no stereoscopic stuff there, and there's no real collaborative kind of input, so you can't have the sort of remote grading stuff or work as a colorist team. But apart from that, it's astonishingly powerful. And obviously the Resolve 12 is out now, which again has added even more tweaks to the mix. You know, it's got audio tools that are quite handy and things like that. So Resolve do seem to be trying to push themselves as a one-stop shop for low cost production.
yeah, I mean, they're not there yet. I mean, they're definitely not there yet. I mean, the editing is not quite there. I still edit in Premiere.
Okay.
And yeah, and also I've had loads of audio problems with, so I can't output the whole video from Resolve. I have to bring it back into Premiere to output it. So it'll get there. It will certainly get there. I mean, when you look back at Final Cut, the first two versions of it were terrible.
Yeah.
But yet then 3 came along and it just changed everything. And I remember I learnt on Premiere as an editor, and then I moved to Final Cut Pro 3, and I was with Final Cut Pro all the way to 7, and then of course 10 came out, and that was when I moved back to Premiere.
See, I'm a big fan of Final Cut Pro 10, but obviously it's a very divisive piece of software. So your mileage may vary, but I think most people do agree that Resolve is a very powerful piece of kit that is improving all the time. So yeah, and it pops up all over the place in very, very professional environments. So if you want to get yourself involved in color grading, your best bet is to grab yourself a free copy of Resolve and start playing around, really.
Yeah, it's the best way of learning, is just sort of doing it. Oh, of course, and then you can also spend loads of money doing a course.
There is that, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I should set myself up as a trainer or something. Who knows?
yeah. But I mean, I think if you can get on a course, do it, because there's a lot there. It can be a bit overwhelming when you first sit down to do it, and it's just sort of knowing what each thing does, and especially working with scopes and stuff. Because I think definitely with the scopes, it's a very sort of good basis to start from, trying to sort of just get the colours sort of in between the top and the bottom.
Yeah, but just understanding. I mean, we're talking about crushing the blacks earlier on. Just understanding, what a black crushed picture looks like, as opposed to one that's got a nice level of contrast, but there's still detail in the blacks. That's very, very easy to do in Resolve, and it gives you a really good basis to go from. The one thing really that does make an incredible difference in any kind of professional grading environment is the control surface, of course, and that's the thing that can cost an awful lot of money. I mean, Resolve do offer their own control surface, which is this lovely big sort of desk with all the bells and whistles, but they're asking 21 grand for that. Whereas you've got companies like RL Kupel and Tangent, particularly, who offer low cost grading surfaces that do pretty much everything that you need to do, but it means you're not constantly poking around with a mouse or a tablet to actually get what you need. And it means you can multitask as well. You can do simple things at once, like, say, you can take your blacks down while bringing your whites up at once. It's a single process, as opposed to dragging and dropping and sort of moving sliders about. And that's what really speeds you up as a colorist.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's I have not had a chance to work with a control surface, so but I imagine it's a lot quicker.
Yeah.
But I have to say, it's gotten easier using the mouse and keyboard to get stuff done, because I remember Colour at first, you tended to just to be trying to drag things along, and it would take, it felt like you were doing a mammoth task dragging your mouse from one side of the table to the other just
It's
to
like,
move
this
it
is so
slightly.
heavy. Why is this so heavy? Um, but yeah, well, personally, I think once you try things with the control surface, you don't go back. And Tangent are releasing a thing called the Ripple, which is brand new this year. I think they're going to be showing it at the NAB, and that's kind of a cut down version of a control surface, but it's got your balls and rings, and it's got a few programmable soft keys. But they're pushing that out for £250, which I think makes makes the whole process a lot more affordable.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're looking at sort of £1,000 or so for something like a wave panel or the Avid Artist Control, that sort of stuff, which is still, it's still doable. But if you can get a lot of the same functionality for £250, I'd say absolutely go for it.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing how much equipment has come down in price now.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Have you noticed there's been more graders coming along now, or is it sort of still the same level as it used to be?
Well, you certainly see a lot of different names appearing now. It always used to be the case where a colorist would only really be credited if they were names of a particular kind of distinction, pedigree, the big names like people like Gian Omashibi or Aidan Farrell and things like that. But because so much more stuff is coming through that needs a colorist's touch, then you do see a lot of guys coming through. There are more suites being built because there's a need for it, frankly. The material does need a little bit of a touch, and stuff gets graded that you wouldn't think. When I'm talking about reality shows, I'm not just talking, say, your nice documentaries or anything like that. A lot of cookery shows, they're all graded. There's a colorist on those. So anything that's kind of multiple cameras, anything that might have, say, DSLR footage or phone footage in it, stuff like that, you tend to find that they will have a colorist supervising that look. Saying look, it might just be making sure it's not bright green throughout, for example. So more there are more colorists than ever before, and God damn it, the world is so much better for it.
I wish that was true on the crew side, because it's I don't know, but I've been finding it very difficult to get work lately.
Really? Oh no.
Yeah,
that's not good.
Yeah. Well, this is what I find with every sort of leap with technology, that more and more people come and do it, and it just means that there's only a certain amount of jobs out there. But there's more people trying to get them. So
definitely.
From a camera point of view, it's a bit of an arms race out there at the moment, because you usually have to own a camera to get work.
Right.
And so you have to pick the right camera, because there's so many of them, but you're not quite sure what camera clients want. I've owned sort of 2 Panasonic GHs. I've had the 2 and the 4.
Yeah.
With the 2, I got a lot of work. With the 4, I've had no work.
Really?
Yeah, because you think, 4K and all this, but a lot of the companies, a lot of clients like the C300.
Oh, really? Okay, fine. And I guess you've got the Blackmagic compact camera now as well, and things like that. So that
yeah. But I mean, as a jobbing camera, the C300 is at the moment is the one to get. I mean, I invested in a Sony Z1 back at the beginning of the 2000s, and I got a lot of work through that. But that was a $3,500 camera.
Yeah, a big lump as well. It's not something you can kind of sling in a backpack or anything like that, is it?
Yeah, but I mean, for for a digital SLR to function as a video camera or film camera, you have to buy so much equipment to make it functional. I mean, my camera at the moment, I couldn't, with everything on it, you just couldn't throw into the back of a backpack. You have to have like a proper case, like I had with my Z1.
Yeah, I mean,
but I was wondering if that's been their case with in the grading world as well, because we've seen like DaVinci become free, and we're now seeing like control surfaces getting cheaper. You know, are you experience the same thing where there's now more people than ever doing, you know, working in that field?
Yes, you are. The trick really with a job in colorist these days is to be platform agnostic, I guess. You know, the job is the job, grading is grading, but you know, within that you've got your resolves, you've got your film lights, you've got also there are loads of different software platforms out there that basically do the same thing. So it's definitely worth your while getting training on all of these, just to understand the differences between the way a new coder will deal with a particular piece of footage, input and output and so on, as opposed to the way Filmlight will deal with it, as opposed to the way that Resolve will deal with it. I mean, Filmlight have got a new version of their software coming out again for NAB 5.0, and that apparently is getting they're apparently doing away with the whole notion of lift, gamma, and gain, and they're changing it to something like I can't even remember what it is, but basically what they're saying is this is a whole new way of working, and I'm not convinced really. I think the process remains the same throughout, and as long as you've got the basic tools to hand, it's really just a case of navigating your way around a different piece of software, and that can come quite quickly. You know, I think if you know Resolve, you'll get to grips with New Coder and Filmlight, or if you know Filmlight, you'll get to grips with New Coder and Resolve comparatively quickly. But you do need to know how to do them, because obviously if you're sitting with a client, the client doesn't want to see you fumbling around and sort of going, oh, you know, where's the play button? They want you to be like, bam, okay, we can do this, we can do that.
Yeah.
You know, if you do need to hunt around to find some of the keying stuff, then that's fine. But I think being able to sit down confidently and at least start to work without fumbling too much is really key to success. As a colorist, and you know, whatever room you sit down in, you should be able to do that. So that's the trick, really. I think any colorist that just says, "Oh, I'm a Resolve colorist," isn't going to get that much work, because obviously, you know, they'll only be able to work in a Resolve suite. Whereas if you say, "I'm a colorist," you can walk into a Resolve suite or a New Coder suite or a Filmlight suite or anything else that's out there, and you know, you basically just expanded your remit that much.
Yeah, I mean it's the same with cameras. If you've used like digital SLRs, or you know, you need to sort of know how to use a Red camera or an ARRI camera, or a C300 or whatever other cameras there are out there, so that because some of the jobs, yes, you need to bring a camera with you, but some of the other jobs, the production are providing the camera, and you need to know what you're doing, and you need to sort of jump in there. So
yeah, exactly.
But more cameras you can work with.
Yeah, but the process remains the same. Basically, as long as you know how to set a focus, how to set aperture, how to sort of light a scene, then that's 90% of what a client is hiring you for. It's not they're not hiring you because you know all the different menu layers on the C300. It's that you can deliver nice looking pictures, and that's what people hire a colorist for. They're not impressed with the fact that you can sort of you can sort of rattle through and you've got custom looks for your New Coder or whatever. It's that you deliver the picture that they want at the end of the day, and that's what it comes down to, really.
Oh yeah, but I mean, you need to. With anything, it's all about time. So if you're fumbling around trying to find where the ISO is and stuff like that, it's you know, it doesn't look good.
No,
so you need to sort of know it from that point of view. I mean, you just sort of need to know where, kind of like where's the record button, so you can just instinctively where to press record.
Yeah,
I mean, majority of them do have them in similar places. I mean, I'm just talking about cameras. I mean, you tend to find that that certain things are in the same places, but then you'll come up against that one camera where it's slightly different.
Yeah. On some control surfaces, it's actually quite difficult to find the play button. Weirdly enough, Da Vinci's early panels were quite strange, because you had kind of that there were two back in the old school now. Yeah, there were two platforms. There was your Poggle and your Da Vinci, and Poggle was always the more straightforward one and is laid out in a much more intuitive fashion, but a lot of stuff that was there was kind of tucked away in menus, whereas Da Vinci, much bigger panel, and everything was on the panel, which meant that finding the play button was actually quite difficult. And it didn't help that, as opposed to the play button being sort of marked off with a little triangle, it was literally just, the play button had play written on it. So you're basically confronted with like an aircraft carrier's worth of controls there, all in text. So, it wasn't actually that easy to find stuff.
Yeah. I mean, so what are you currently working on?
Currently, I've kind of, over the past few years, I've kind of settled into more of a sort of archive role. So, embracing the fact that there's 100 years worth of film out there that also needs to be exploited, is the wrong word, kind of shared with the general public. So, I've been working with a lot of the big sort of film libraries that obviously have warehouses full of old 16mm, old 35mm, and basically getting them into a position where they can be shared with the general public through things like YouTube, or say for the BBC Archive, BFI as well, BFI player, that sort of stuff. So it's about kind of archive restoration and archive distribution, really, and that's a fun challenge to sort of play around with that. I mean, I do get the odd other other odds and sods come through as well, but for the most part, I'm kind of back to where I started, if you like. I'm on a daily basis. I'm handling film, which makes me very, very unusual in the colorist world these days. A lot of colorists really wouldn't know wouldn't actually know what to do with a roll of 35mm. So I'm quite unusual in that aspect these days. But yeah, I enjoy it. It's challenging to get the best out of material that's obviously been sat in a can for possibly 50, 60 years. But the joy of it is when you get something up that hasn't been seen, has got real significant cultural or artistic value, and looks amazing right out the bat. I'll give you an example of that. Just before Christmas, we had a guy come in with basically a carrier bag with some film in it, and it was some stuff that he'd found in his garage that had been kicking around, and it was very, very early animation, 16mm animation of a character called Oswald the Rabbit. Now, Oswald the Rabbit is the precursor of Mickey Mouse, and this was something that basically he got hold of Disney, who obviously owned the copyright to Oswald the Rabbit, and said, I've got this stuff, what do you want to do with it? And Disney basically paid for a whole 4K scan and restoration of this Oswald the Rabbit stuff that he had, which was screened at the NFT over Christmas.
Oh, and wow!
That's the joy of this kind of material, really. It's finding the hidden gems. It's finding the weird little odds and sods that you wouldn't expect to see, and that's the fun of it, really. Just being able to have the skills to be able to get this stuff in a position where people can enjoy it again, rather than it being stuck in a warehouse, in someone's garage, in a plastic bag somewhere, getting it onto YouTube, getting it onto the iPlayer, and having people, showing it to people and saying, look, isn't this great? Isn't this fantastic? The fact that this was shot 60, 70, 80 years ago, and we can still enjoy it now. And that's the fun of what I do these days.
Oh, brilliant. But I mean, that's not the only thing you do at the moment. I mean, I just sort of want to quickly touch on the, because you do a lot of podcasts
Yes, we do. Yes.
If you're listening and you're wondering, I've heard that voice on here before. How have I heard this voice before? Well, because Rob with Clive do the A to Z of SFF, and of course that advert is always played in our main episodes.
Very nice to hear that as well. Yes, yes. Thank you for doing the plug for me, pretty much. But yeah, the A to Z of SFF is basically myself and Clive Ashenden's attempt to take the whole great fat universe of science fiction and fantasy and kind of put some sort of order to it. So we're in a reboot mode at the moment. We've done one season of it, which was basically A is for, which kind of worked, but you know, we want to retool things and bring and liven things up a bit for 2016. So we're just in the final stages of tweaking a reboot. I've got Berea Thomas, who does our front and end credits. She's doing a record for us on Sunday. Okay. I've already done new front and end titles, music wise as well. I've composed some music for that, and yeah, hopefully we should have the A to Z back up and running in the next fortnight at the very latest, I would have said. And you know, what's old is new again.
I mean, it's thanks to you guys that sort of piques my interest in sort of doing a podcast. And so what was it that made you want to go out and do, you know, to make podcasts? Because you've done this one and you did the Speakeasy beforehand.
Clive was always the main motive for that. He's a big podcast fan, and he was quite keen to do it. But because, you know, we've done an awful lot of stuff creatively together, from sort of film work and writing work and things like that, it seemed like a natural fit to give it a go. So yeah, I mean, we did the Speakeasy for 18 months, I suppose, and then moved on to the A to Z of SFF.
Yeah,
but I think it works because it's about the relationship between the two of us. I mean, it's the same with you and Keith doing Movie Heaven, Movie Hell. You know, part of the fun of it is that the two of you do mesh together quite nicely.
Yeah.
And also, to be honest with you, podcasting's a hell of a lot easier than making a film. So yeah, there's always that.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, to think, because, you know, it takes us, say, you know, we record this for over an hour, and then you just sort of, if you want, I could literally just put this up straight away, and ta-da, it's there. Though I do edit these, you know, just to take certain things out. You know, especially like background noise and things like that. But
that's fair enough.
But yeah, with a film, you kind of have to write the scripts, you have to get everybody together, you have to then, you know, you probably spend days shooting it and then months editing it, and, you know, post-production, doing sound, music and stuff, and then you go, there you go. You know, months later.
Yeah.
Days later, you know.
And there's the whole distribution thing of it as well, whereas with a podcast, you can be very, very fast moving. You can get stuff up within a couple of hours of it being recorded, and that just goes everywhere. You know, you can stick it on iTunes, and there you go, folks. There's our latest podcast. So yeah, I do enjoy it. You know, the process can get a little bit wearing sometimes, but you know, when you're in the mood for it, it's good fun, isn't it?
Well, I mean, one of the reasons why we started this podcast, me and Keith, was the fact that we had planned to do a very long episode on the Speakeasy about Michael Mann films, and of course you guys decided to stop doing the Speakeasy, and I just wondered what the reasons were for that decision.
Well, it kind of got to a point with the Speakeasy where it was turning into a huge thing. You know, we'd done an episode on Blake 7 that I think was a 3-hour record that we had to break into 2 parts, and it was just getting to the point for me personally, because I was the guy that was basically taking everything, doing all the editing, sticking music on, and so on and so forth. It was just getting to be an awful lot of work for what it was, and I kind of just wanted to change things up as well. I think, you know, doing stuff for more than 18 months on a podcast is all well and good, but I think it's always worth freshening up the mix and trying something new. So there was a couple of different elements there. Really, it was kind of a case of, okay, we've sort of done this, let's try something else. I know you guys were very, very disappointed about not doing the Michael Mann, but ultimately, what's come out of the back of it is a very good new podcast. So really, you should be thanking me for closing down.
You know. Thank you.
You're welcome. All I can say is I'm glad to be an inspiration. But I mean, the great thing about podcasting is when me and Clive first started the Speakeasy, God, whenever that must be 2.5, 3 years ago now. We were very, very nervous on the mic, and that really shows. You can still listen to the Speakeasy now. It's still out there. You know, I still paid a little bit of hosting for it, and it still actually gets listens. Weirdly enough, I sort of go back and sort of think, well, maybe I could, you know, save myself £5 a month and just like close down the Libsyn account for it. No, you know, there's 20, 30, 40 listens a week sometimes of like 18-month-old podcasts. And it's like, okay, well, fine, fair enough. But the more you podcast, the better you get. You know, it's the same with anything. You know, the more you do it, the better you get at it. And I really like actually just being able to chat, or you know, through a mic to people now, which is something that if as a classic introvert, I think it kind of works for me because I don't have to sort of be on with people, even though I can be on with people, because there's that little sort of there's that little buffer zone on there. I've painted myself into a corner there.
Well, let me just rescue you. Get you out of the corner quick. But no, I know what you mean. It's sort of it's been very good exercise, sort of, you know, just especially when you talk to people, because we've had like you know, about 4 interviews with people who, you know, I sort of consider to be more into the film industry. And when we did our Kenneth Johnston interview, I have to say I was nervous as anything.
Yeah, I'd have been absolutely bricking it, but no, it worked brilliantly, that one. Yeah,
but it does sort of help to sort of you know, because I've said this many times, but when I was a kid, I had to go through speech therapy,
right?
And so it kind of helps listening back to yourself and listening how you actually talk, you know, and how, you know, you get your point over and asking questions and stuff like that. So I think from that point of view, it's helped me, and you know, and yeah, and people do listen to it. I mean, it kind of like sounds like we're sort of, you know, you know, patting each other on the back.
Well, why not? You know,
yeah, I know. You know, sort of self-grandizing, but it's it's very enjoyable. Is the thing. It's very enjoyable, and it's and I have a lot of fun doing this, and I get to, you know, talk to people in the industry about what they do, and that's the one thing I've always loved about the film industry, is the fact that you meet people and you all have the same interest, which is film, but then you can hear all these different stories and talk about different aspects, because as people do so much different jobs on a film set, and in, you know, in post-production and everything else.
Yeah, film's a big subject, and you know, it's fun to see you guys sort of embracing all aspects of it and doing a really good job. So yeah, there you go, good job, well done.
So do you think you're going to get onto the B's now?
Well,
let's. We're going to get out of the A's.
Well, I tell you what. All I will say is, wait and see. Like I say, we'll be relaunching in the next week to fortnight, and it's going to be a very different experience. Is all I'll tell you about that. So yeah, wait and see. Wait and see. I hope you're going to enjoy what we've done, the changes that we're making.
Excellent, excellent. To end it,
Yeah.
We always sort of end by asking people where people can find your work online, or if they can or where they can contact you. So, Rob, where can we find your work?
Okay, well, I've got a YouTube channel. I guess the best bet is to search YouTube under Rob Wickings. You should be able to find me there. I'm very active on Twitter. You can find me as Konohito. That's CONOJITO. And obviously the podcast is the main creative push at the moment. You can find us on YouTube. Not on YouTube, sorry. You can find us on iTunes, on Facebook and Twitter if you search for the A to Z of SFF. But the main landing point for the podcast is its own website, which is the A to Z of SFF.com. So I think that'll pretty much do it.
That certainly will. And as always, you can find my work at independentrunnings.com. And you can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Mixcloud, and YouTube. You can follow us on Facebook and on Twitter. Just search Movie Heaven, Movie Hell. And please do leave us a review and rating on iTunes and Stitcher. It all helps. So that just leaves me to say thank you to our guest.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a real blast today.
And yes, and look forward to our next episode of Movie Heaven, Movie Hell.